Yes. High five.
Woo! Boom! All right. So I guess we might as well start again.
Hi, welcome to our new bit rate.
But yeah, so I guess what did we want to do today? We wanted to play back the trailer and sort of talk a little bit more in depth on little bits and pieces of it. I think some people were, I don't know, a little bit confused by it or thought it didn't fill in all the gaps. So we wanted to do that, and then we want to take some questions from you. We've got some questions from the Kickstarter page and from Twitter, but also obviously in chat. If you guys have any questions, we've got it up, and we will be answering those as well. So let me start by playing a bit of the trailer, and I guess you can reach over and hit pause whenever you want to stop as well. Oh. The island of Penferzy.
So obviously a bit of classic scene setting here, and we've seen that we were kind of showing three different levels, essentially. The fact that the game takes place on an island, you see that straight away. And then you see that we're starting off in a caravan park, and that's going to be where the main character, Demelza, lives. And then we go inside the caravan, and we see Demelza playing with Nessa, playing their favourite video game. And the interior of the caravan is kind of representing the child's bedroom, that kind of safe place that's full of all your your important trinkets and treasures, all the things that you've grabbed from the world and hoarded and taken back there. You can see on screen there's things like there's a little diorama of a space set that she's maybe made in school, a sort of little what would you call it? Sort of moon craters. Yeah. I don't know about you, Moo, but I used to make them in school out of egg boxes. You always cut those weird, I don't know what sort of shape how to describe that. The egg box shape.
Exactly.
Cut them off, stick them on some sand, and then you've got the moon.
Yeah, because I remember when you were working on the scene, and it was one of these things of it sort of started as a bit of a shell, and it's just layers and layers and layers, and eventually I think it's sort of at that point where you could look at all of it and just find all the little bits and pieces, because there's there's the, I'm actually going to expand this a bit, but there's the playing cards, and then there's the games console, and there's the little things hanging from the ceiling. There's this fish creature in the top left that you can see, and the windows to the outside. So yeah, I thought it was we've done a few versions, cuts of the trailer, and it really felt nice that it's the first time you see the characters, but there's also so much more that you could be digging into.
Yeah, I mean, we did have some edits where we actually just instead of seeing outside of the caravan, that you just saw you saw close-ups of all these different elements. So exactly. You saw the playing cards on the floor, and you saw the spaceship, and it was almost trying to wrong foot you on knowing what sort of game it was. We actually had a version that centered entirely on the Vector video game that they're playing, so that you sort of, maybe we could sort of confuse people of thinking, this is a game about being a sort of vectory superhero, and then pull back and reveal that it's not that game at all.
I mean, one of the interesting questions that already came up is just how much of this is real and an engine, and how much of this is fake. So I'm gonna get everyone on a little secret. So basically, if you look on the screen, you see this little black border around thing, the vignette, basically. Anything that has the vignette on it is definitely captured in game, because we didn't put vignettes on any of the animated sequences that we did. So all of this is in game. We just use the normal game. I wrote a little debug camera, and we just zoom in on things. So all of this is in engine and in game, and just captured from the stuff that we've already built.
Yeah.
Should I move a bit further? Or do you have more to say?
No, why not?
Yeah. All right. Grabbing the Magnus 8.
So this is kind of less of a let's play and more of a let's press play.
Let's press play.
So we saw in that last section the act of the kids stopping playing the game. They're very into playing their video games, but also they're very interested in exploring the island. And we spent a lot of time like trying to come up with the right transition
Yeah.
between them playing the game and then them getting outside.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we kind of dropped all the like really complicated ones and
Yeah.
just got Nessa to just push the controller away and you know and
Yeah. It's time to run around, basically.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was really nice. And
I had a lot of fun. Can I scrub this back, or
yeah,
is that?
it's just down here.
Oh right. Wow.
Technology of QuickTime.
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun like designing this controller, which you can't quite see because there's a big hand in the way, and our faces. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love designing video game controllers for consoles that don't exist.
Yeah, and the box art they did is also for the same games console, right?
That's right.
The Magus 8.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I can't remember why I picked that name, but it sounded cool.
Have you played Chrono Trigger? Because Magus is one of the key
Oh, really?
characters in Chrono Trigger.
I keep making these links without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and we can see as they come out a little bit more of the caravan park,
Yeah.
which Demelza lives on.
Yeah.
And this is where Nessa, the outsider from the island, comes and visits her. And I think something that was, really appeals to me. I've got this thing for caravans.
Mhm.
I think it was because as a kid we had a caravan on our farm, and I used to love. It was kind of decrepit and falling apart, and it was the one place that I was allowed to go. Well, I don't know if I was allowed to, but I could get away with going in and just smashing it up and causing all kinds of mayhem.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's something nice about the juxtaposition of the sort of warm safety of the interior of the caravan, where it's all full of Demelza's favourite things, all
Yeah.
her posters and her comic books
Yeah.
and her video games. But then outside, it's incredibly precarious. You
Mhm.
know, I don't think parents really should be leaving their young, excitable daughters in caravans on wheels on the top of a cliff. You know,
Just
it's-
right on the edge.
Exactly,
You can see it
yeah.
there.
So there's a bit of a tension going on
Yeah.
there of, safety, but also there's a huge possibility of extreme danger.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that, like, when I think, we always iterate on these things, we sort of build something and one of the things that always like jumped out at me is just like watching this little sequence here is like all those little stars in the sky and like all the wind wisps. And I think it's really important for us that like at all times the island feels alive, like everything feels like this moving painting and like it, I think it's kind of a shame because I think our screenshots also look great, but I just think like the game in motion, there's just so many little touches and, constantly things that are moving that makes it, attracts your eye here or there and that kind of stuff. And I think it's really nice.
It's definitely something that I've done a lot of animation in the past, but it's something that I learned, I think, on Tearaway is just how much you can bring a world to life by just having a little bit of movement everywhere. Almost like everything is got a slightly stop motion, hand-drawn look. Because I think often games, they look really beautiful in a static way, but they don't necessarily have a lot of movement other than what the player is doing themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like NPCs or what have you. And obviously, that's somewhere that you want to be spending a lot of your budget in making sure that the characters are running around. You don't want a load of sliding boxes.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if wherever possible, to make sure that everything is sort of moving and flapping around, and that really helps convey the atmosphere of this little island where it's quite, it's really stormy. There's everything's being battered by the wind and the rain, and like also like some of the stuff that you've been writing for the way you interact with the world. It's important that we don't just have a lot of like pre-canned animations that are all playing out, that when you run through the bushes they are all shaking.
Exactly,
and, and that's something that I'm sure we'll build on more of, having like leaves and things coming off and blowing around. And
because that was one of those, I mean, at Insomniac working on the Ratchet games. Like I always remember there was just that joy in walking through bushes, and it's just like there's so many worlds that don't react to you and don't feel alive in the same way. And just, you know, you walk through something and it shakes and it's just a little bit of something. And, you know, in our game, we actually even have a thing of like, you know, you walk through a bush and, you know, a little treasure might pop out or something like that. But yeah, I think it's important to remember, like, the world has to be as much a character as, you know, the characters themselves, you know. Like, I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but, you know, as you progress through the game, like, you know, the world will be changing and will, you know, will sort of fit the moment. And, you know, we have, like, you know, our color lighting solutions, and we have, you know, just how we're going to decorate things that appear or disappear, like things that turn on or close and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's really important for that world to feel really alive.
Yeah, because it brings out all of those, like, that kid-like way of exploring the world, of wanting to jump in all the puddles and, you know, kick up the leaves and splash everything in mud. And, you know, if it's kind of too static, then it's not there, like, sort of teasing that kind of playful behavior out of you.
Yeah, exactly. Should we go a bit further? Although, like, I've got to talk a little bit about the word co-op, because like one thing I definitely, I don't know if we've emphasized enough, like, is that you can definitely play the game on your own, single player. The AI will take over the other character for you. But I think it's really important to remember that, like, I think we pitch it as co-op because I think there's something magical about when you actually get to play a game with someone else. You know, I think as I've gotten older and now I'm about to get married in a couple months. I always feel like, you know, games where you have the option of playing with someone else, especially if there's a bit of asymmetry there, like of you know, one person fits this mold better and one person fits another mold better. And I think that's the sort of thing we want to think about. But I think there's a lot of, even if you're playing with the AI, it's like, I guess the key is, if I'm playing with my other half, I can basically say, like, no, you do this or I do this. It's like the AI is probably not going to hear you, and you might have to adapt to them a little bit more than
I thought
a real.
It was going to be like voice activated.
Voice activated.
What
are you doing? Move. I just wanted to chime in there a little bit. But yeah,
I should say, co-op is an English supermarket, but, you know, this does not mean that you're exploring an English supermarket.
Cool. Let's go a bit further.
Puffins.
So many birds.
There are a lot of birds in our game. More birds.
More birds, seagulls.
Geese.
And woodpeckers. Should we pause right after that?
Go for it.
Cool. So yeah, that was actually a lot of things that we sort of went by. I'm scrubbing back a bit. So do you want to tell us, so I guess I want to highlight a little bit, like, the different areas that we've built so far. Like, so far, this is all part of the caravan park with this sort of like on the cliff's edge and that kind of stuff. And then we've got a little scene in the forest, which is sort of, I think it's one of these areas that I think we primarily, or not primarily, but we first built it for like a bike path. So somewhere you ride your bike around, but then we started thinking about how to reuse these elements in different ways. So it's like, it's a place that if you're in a hurry, you get on your bike and you ride through. But if you're looking for treasure, you might, you know, actually be on foot and be, you know, searching all the nooks and crannies, trying to find little treasures, trying to find, you know, a woodpecker to catch, or, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, so we've got the little forest area. We've got this character. Do you want to tell us anything about her?
Well, she was dotted all through this section are shots, the shot before as well, are of a sort of crazy golf course. Because this is an island that, although it has like ancient history, it's got a lot of modern tourist attractions that are sort of capitalizing on that history. So lots of like cardboard standees of characters from the past. And that particular character that we were scrubbing over just now, she was designed as an ancient hero that Demelza is really impressed with. You know, here's a real role model for her. This woman, this, you know, very strong, tough woman with flowing red hair and a giant sword. You know, that's kind of exactly who Demelza would like to be. And also the fact that she's on a boat as well, you know, it suggests that she is either getting off the island or coming to the island, and those are both, you know, things that the two characters are doing. That Nessa arrives on the island, and it's her dream to get here. And Demelza, it's kind of her dream to get off here and find out what's happening on the mainland, because she's playing all these video games, she's collecting her comics, and all of these things that are just sort of telling her a little bit more about the world outside, but it's a very sort of skewed view of what the world outside is.
Definitely. Cool. And then I can't remember what else we had. One thing I wanted to point out, it's always raining in Penfersey. Anywhere you go, it's always raining.
It's fun to animate rain, you know? It's an easy win.
And this is sort of like the harbor area where like a lot of the businesses are and that kind of thing. Like, I think it was actually one of, you know, the first concepts that we kind of had was this idea of having like sort of this, I don't know, commercial or industrial part of the island, but it's also, I think it's a really great opportunity for us to sort of visually represent that relationship between the islanders and the girls. So I think sort of at the beginning, a lot of the islanders aren't so keen on either of the girls. You know, Demelza is very, you know, modern, into technology and video games. And I think, you know, the islanders, there's some that are more modern, some that are a bit more old school. But, you know, they're not, you know, necessarily seeing eye to eye. And then, you know, Nessa's a mainlander, so she's, you know, like all the way out there, you know, they're the people that they have to serve during the tourist seasons, that kind of thing. But it's like, we kind of love the idea of, it's something that sort of starts and everything's shut down because it's the off season and nothing's really happening. But as you sort of, you know, as you win all the islanders over, they're willing to open up their shops for you and help you out in whatever way they can. And it's just like, for, you know, an area to sort of visually light up and come to life as you play the game, I thought like was a really, I don't know, a nice way to combine those things.
Definitely,
So, all right, let's. On to treasure. All right. Did you want to talk about some of the treasure that you put in there and some of the ideas that we got from the Loot Jam?
Yeah, because I don't know if everyone who's watching at the moment knows that we're currently running a sort of Loot Jam on the Kickstarter page, where everyone can comment. In the comments, like add in some ideas of loot that they would like to find in the game. And what we're focusing this loot on is very much like a child's idea of what is precious. You know, I was actually lucky enough as a kid to find a Stone Age arrowhead, which was pretty cool. You know, that was proper treasure. But most of the time, I would be, you know, collecting crisp packets or you know, shiny stones or bits of glass that have been like washed up on the beach, or all of these sort of things. And they're all kind of precious, and you take them home and you put them in a great big box and shove it under the bed, and you can never really throw them away. But to anyone else, they don't really have any purpose. But obviously to whoever found them, they're pretty special. So instead of having a game where you are, you know, finding the holy amulet of healing +5, it's more about finding these things and then sort of bartering or, you know, using them to get adults to help you. So some of the, let's see what we had in here. So we've got, these were just a few examples of things that I'd already made, but so we had a mouse skull. That's always a cool thing to find. Had quite a lot of those as a child. We've got it's really hard to
badge.
This is a very fast moving section of the video, so I probably can't even stop it on. So this is the key one for me: owl pellets. We had a barn owl on our farm, and it lived in one of the barns, as barn owls do, and it was, I don't know if everyone knows about the way owls work, but essentially their digestive system means that they just And then a few hours later, they kind of puke up the bits that they can't digest in these little pellets. It's pretty disgusting, really. And it's a mixture of fur and hair and teeth and bones and stuff.
You might even find a mouse skull in your owl
Exactly,
pellet.
yeah,
You never know.
exactly.
Yeah, it's a crafting system right there.
Yeah. You can craft the ultimate owl pellets with our game. And yeah, they're pretty fascinating though as a kid, because you just put your rubber gloves on. It's probably a good idea to put rubber gloves on, and tease them apart and just find out like exactly what that owl had been eating that day. So it's the currency of the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we went, like I was in the Boy Scouts and we went camping, one of the things they did was, they'd always preserve them for you and save a bunch for when you came, and they let you open the owl pellets. But actually having an owl on the farm, it's a daily occurrence for you.
Infinite pellets for me.
All the pellets. Oops.
So now we get our first hint that there's some problems on the island. We saw Demelza's father there.
Yeah.
So he's designed. I'll just talk a little bit about his design. Let's see if we can get him. We can't actually really get both of them on screen. So I had a little problem where I wanted it to be obvious that he's her father. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want him to have the same distinctive red hair as Demelza, because that came from her mother's side, and also I just wanted him to look older. He's got grey hair. Yeah. But it was tricky because it couldn't really show that relationship straight off. It's kind of just a little visual trick, but the fact that he's wearing this thick parka with the orange lining, the hope was that it would like associate the two characters to each other, and a sort of deeper meaning as well in the way that they're wearing their coats is that Demelza, if you notice, she never puts the coat entirely on. Mm-hmm. She wears it on her head and then lets it trail out behind like a superhero cape, because she's all about bursting out into the world and being the little tiny superhero. Whereas her dad, he wears the coat completely differently. He's wearing the coat all done up, but then the hood's off. Yeah. And there's that kind of change in the way they dress. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of just that contrast, just showing that they're similar, but they're different. Yeah. They both like hooded attire, but use it differently.
You're getting all the coat-based scoop on our stream today.
I think one of the things about this part is I think up to this point everything's just happy-go-lucky, everyone's running around. And I think we did want to make sure to, I don't know if it's to warn people, but it's just like that there's a little bit more to the story. It's not just a run around and hit things because it's fun to hit things. Kind of it's like there's something going on the island, and in particular on the island of Penferzy, it's sort of that no one really believes in their legends anymore. No one really wants to come to the island, and so sort of the tourism has died down, and they're just sort of struggling financially. And I think it's one of these things of when you show something from a kid's perspective, sometimes it makes the kid seem invincible, they don't understand enough to grasp how bad it is. But I think there's other times where it's just this. The idea of losing your home, they know so little about the world, and it just seems like everything is going to break. And I think, it's I think that's one of these really interesting juxtapositions, because, there's definitely times where we're going to use Demelza's childhood, naivete and just make things crazy and, something very crazy is happening, but she doesn't care. She's just, happy to go along. But I think there's also moments where, it's almost worse for the child because, they have so little control and so little understanding of the world. And, I think we just want to convey a little bit of a feeling that was going on. Anything else to add to this part?
I don't think so. I mean, you can see two actually there's 3 representations of her dad on the screen at the same time. But so the one on the left is one of Demels's own drawings of her dad as a golf ball, because we're on a golf course at the moment. Well, thus you can see the words club, balls and snacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go on to the next bit. Stop there.
Frisbee.
So yeah, I think the interesting, I mean, you talked about the juxtaposition of coat styles, but I think that's right here we want to sort of show a different juxtaposition, which is sort of the juxtaposition between like the idea of losing your home, which is sort of like this really, it doesn't have like a strong visual impact. It's sort of this like very powerful emotional thing that doesn't have like a huge visual representation. And then we wanted to show sort of this visual representation side, which is sort of like these evil spirits that are sort of taking over the island, which has like, you know, a really strong visual, you know, effect, but doesn't necessarily have the same emotional impact. I mean, it could, but it, you know, it doesn't necessarily. And I think it's just making sure that we got both of those right.
Yep.
Of like, you know, one of them is, you know, this very visceral threat, and one of them is sort of a much more emotional threat.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to point out is that if you go back here and you sort of look at like, you know, this vector crown and these, you know, vector style spikes and that kind of thing. And I think, I remember asking you if it was intentional or not, but it's just sort of the idea that, you know, Demelza plays her video game and it's, you know, in a vector art style. And then so sort of when you get to sort of the evil spirits in the world, that they sort of also take on this vector art style. And I thought it was a really nice combination. I presume it was intentional, but...
It was, yes. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think we should go into too much detail about it, but I think, yeah, it's good to, wanted to draw some parallels between some of the like really gamey, video gamey sides to the game with Demelza's own imagination and the way that she's perceiving the world.
Yeah. Cool. Go through that again. I'm actually going to pause. Let me go back real quick. I remember that you've basically redone it and built it in motion and all that kind of stuff, but like one of the earliest images that I ever saw you draw was like the idea of like an island with a big sword above it. And I think that was just I think that was sort of the moment that I realized I kind of know what this game is now. It was kind of weird just going through, I think, you know, we were bouncing ideas. We went through so many ideas, and it was all over the place. But then I think sort of that idea of, you know, this idea of knights and, you know, the medieval themes mixed with, you know, this island and this basically the struggling island in the modern day, and you take something that's very old and, you know, very, you know, violent and visceral, and then you take the other side of things. But I remember it didn't look exactly like this, but it was like one of the first pieces that you did. I was like, oh, okay, I totally get this game now.
Because there's an element of sort of sword in the stone kind of thing, but obviously it's not in the stone, it's above the stone. But then very much the sword of Damocles thing of just a threat that's hovering over everyone's livelihoods, sort of tying together several themes of the game. And it looks cool as well.
That was always one of my favorite gags.
Yeah, I had fun with that one. I thought if that guy is so buttoned up, you know, he's so repressed in his coat that he's not even going to get affected by this like world-changing force.
Yeah.
He's just going to be like, huh?
Cool. I'm going to jump back a little.
So should we go back through a few
Yeah.
of these before we? Oh, nice shot. So you're seeing here some of the ways that we are bringing out the kind of kid-like interactions with the world, using the kind of tools that they would have.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have swords and shields, or they might have swords and shields, but they're going to be improvised swords and shields. And we were thinking about Moo had coded up a kind of a projectile, but then we were brainstorming about how we could make that. You know, we don't want. It's not like they're going to be running around with guns, or you know, we needed a cool kind of projectile that you could throw away and it would come back, but we didn't want it to be a boomerang because there's another game that has a boomerang in it. And it felt like it would be a fun thing to have an item that Nessa could maybe have picked up from one of the tourist stores on the island. You know, the classic kind of thing that I know I had several from gift shops that would have like whatever theme park or amusement arcade that you'd been to sort of printed over it in bright colours, which would also like happily like really stand out against the background, because quite a lot of the time you're playing in sort of darker or muted environments, so having something very bright and colourful, you know, having this sort of thing that's quite sort of rainbow coloured that you can be flinging around and attacking kind of enraged rodents with. They're probably a little bit obscure to like understand what these enemies are, but they're kind of extremely angry.
Stoats.
Yeah.
And I think we actually do get a lot of questions about what the gameplay is like, at least the combat gameplay, and I think a lot of people are curious, like how difficult is it and that kind of thing. And I think the key to me is that it's not supposed to be like this super ultra precision reflexive whatever. It's much more about puzzles. It's more about figuring out what is the best way with the abilities that the two girls have to combine them and to sort of like wrestle these creatures under control. So specifically the frisbee was the idea of like, well, if we had characters that were shielded from the front, and we have some in one of the later scenes, a frisbee would be a really nice way that you could throw it past them and then run as it's coming back to hit them from behind. But it also, the other nice thing about like a shielded enemy is like it encourages sort of the co-op gameplay of like whoever it goes after, the other one run around back and go and just hit them in the back of the head. I always am looking for these opportunities to either have the two characters work together or have interesting sort of mechanics that go between the enemies and the abilities.
Because I mean they're quite different characters, so the way that they deal with the world and the abilities that they have need to be quite different as well. I think you can really imagine Demelza leaping in a puddle and splashing mud on things, but I don't really imagine Nessa doing that.
Not really.
She's a bit more
careful and calculated and sort of strategic about things. I think Demelza will always run in full strength and go. And
it'll be interesting, like whether players, when they are playing co-op, whether they will always want to play one character or the other.
Exactly. Because I definitely know in my old Secret of Mana days, I think we had a big argument the first time we played of who got to play who, but eventually it was just like, no, like, I'm really good at this, you're a great support class, so on and so forth. So,
Support class. Wow, that's cool. So
you want to talk about
So with the
double click.
So let's go back to these guys.
There are people. A few things in chat that I've been noticing. I've been glancing over, but the text is tiny. Most of this stuff is captured in game, as we mentioned earlier. But I think the song for the audio track was done by Daniel Pemberton, and then all the sound effects were done by Kenny Young, as someone just mentioned.
So these this section, the video game, like Demelza's favourite video game. It was a little bit of a challenge to figure out how the game would look because It needed to look really retro and fit in with the era, but at the same time, I didn't want it to like completely change from the art style of the rest of the game.
Yeah.
It still needed to be like a hand-drawn art style. And I tried to do like hand-drawn pixel art, and it just looked terrible. I mean, and it took so long, you know.
Yeah.
You're just doing one paint stroke, and then you switch to a different color and do another paint stroke. And it's, I think, pixel art and a kind of hand-painted aesthetic just I couldn't get them to work together.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about some of the other styles. I mean, there was only really one sort of other style at the time, which was the more vector style. I think there was a Star Wars game, which I've never played, but I remember looking at screenshots.
And your complete avoidance of all things Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't tell everyone. So I thought, maybe a more vector style could be interesting, because then you could still get that sort of wobbly, hand animated, sort of linear style. So that's kind of how this look came about.
Cool.
And this was a sequence that we started the trailer with. The idea was that you saw this great knight who's like striding through the battlefield. And then he, takes an arrow, and it's clear that this kind of world it's going to need a new hero.
Yeah.
And then we pull back and we see who's actually controlling the character, which is the Nessa and Demelza, which was kind of a nice idea, but just didn't work at all.
It was just a bit confusing when you started the game in another game, and then it was just like, oh, there's this game, but that's not our game. There's another game that's outside. It was just like, it's a bit.
Yeah.
I think you're low on battery. You should take this.
Oh.
Sorry for the loud clanking.
I feel like I'm low on battery.
Cool. I'll go a bit. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about Demelza's Puddle Stomp. And that, like, one of the things, I think one of the things that we're working on right now actually is just easier than scrubbing. So one of the things we're working on now is just that ability that, so, she's got to stomp like anything. It does, small area of effect, but if she can find a puddle to do it in, it has a much bigger effect. And the puddles are, I think each one you can jump in 3 or 4 times, just depending on their size. And so we're trying to think of like, well, if that sort of superpowers her ability, like how do you start, and you run out of puddles, what can you really do? And so right now we're working on the water balloon ability for Nessa, where, she can throw like this big giant water balloon that makes a puddle, that I mean, you can use that as an ability on its own, but obviously you get one hit with it if it's just thrown at an enemy. But if she throws it on the ground, then Demelza can get like 4 of these big splashes out of it, which is sort of one of those other like co-op elements. Yeah.
We haven't yet decided whether you have to fill up the water balloon, so it could get quite a long chain.
Find water, fill up water balloon, upgrade your inventory. No.
We should probably talk about that guy.
Yeah.
So you don't really see him very much in our trailer yet, but we have this character called the Pickled Knight, who is the head of a. Can you just go forward 1 frame? Oh yeah, look at that!
Hey,
whoa,
whoa.
look, stop motion. Let's just get him settling on the ground. Come on. That'll do.
There you go.
And he is the head of an ancient hero, who was sort of hacked up into bits and left for dead, sort of preserved by the briny rock pool that he was left in. I mean, he's kind of where the game starts to become a little bit more magical and unusual. I mean, the 2 main characters are very much designed to be like little kids who grew up in the 80s and enjoyed all the things that were going on then. but he's, you know, definitely more of a video game type character.
Yeah.
And we can have a lot of fun with him because, you know, ultimately he is this great warrior who is just reduced to just being a kind of slightly shrunken head with not so many abilities anymore. He's got pretty sharp teeth, but that's kind of about it.
Yeah. Just gnawing things. Cool.
So we should probably talk about these
Bikes.
bike things.
Yeah. We actually didn't talk much about the knights.
That's true.
We have as many knights in this video as we have birds, I think,
true.
which is good.
Yeah,
But and I think I think it's interesting in that I think knights is almost more of a setting than it is a focus on actual knights. Although we have, you know, obviously the pickled knight is a knight or was a knight. Also, the other thing I wanted to stop on real quick is just this idea of like, you know, the shielded characters and a little bit of that gameplay bit. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was worth going back and looking at our little knights before we discussed all the bike stuff. But yeah, let's go on to the bike stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, bikes are, I think, one of the most joyful things you have as a kid. You know, you're kind of restricted in your movement or movements when you can't drive a car. You know, you've got limited there's limited ways that you can get around the world. And when you get your first bike, you know, suddenly the world expands a bit for you. And it can be quite hard going, you know, you're going through mud or you're trying to go uphill and it hasn't really got the gears that you need, and it's a real struggle. And then of course you get to the top and then you can just put your feet like Demelza is currently doing on screen at the moment. You stick your feet up in the air and head back and just leave caution way behind as you go hurtling down, you know, over a whatever.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I always just chime in with the gameplay bit, but like we made sure, so like, the bikes were just one of the things that I think we tried to tackle a few times, and I think we got close a few times, and then we finally got it, and it was just sort of, making sure, I think with the 2D, 3D mix that we have, just getting it across, but like, you know, getting the gameplay right of like, you know, one of the things that I think we're both really keen on is the idea that, you know, you have your pedal button and your brake button, but also that you can do like slide turns and that kind of stuff. And I think we even have like fire particle effects on like the slide turns. If you can get the perfect skid down, you know, you sort of set the ground on fire. But also that, you know, like when you're riding on the right track, you can build up speed. But if you're sort of riding off course constantly, you're not really building up correctly and that kind of stuff. But there's all those little feel things that I think it took us a while to get.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it was very important to us that that the bike was very maneuverable. And I think, how many directions? Is it like
it's like
32?
32, yeah.
So, you know, I had to draw the bike in 32 different directions, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
And it's been kind of like Moo was touching on this, the mixture that we have a 3D world, but the content within the world is mostly 2D, including the characters. So it was kind of a fun little problem to solve of how to make a bike go in 32 different directions. In a 3D scene, but using only 2D artwork.
Yeah, I think we're both so, I don't know, I think we're always so obsessed with details as well. I mean, I presume it comes across in like all things, but like that we're like, okay, we finally got a bike in 32 directions, but I'm like, but when you turn, like the front wheel should go, and it's like, now we need to do this many front wheels and this much. Yeah, but getting all that kind of stuff was, I think it does show in the end, and I think one of the other things that we added with the bike that it improved it so much more than I ever would have imagined. It's just like that trail as you're riding around. Like there's times when I've been programming bike bits and it just feels like, well, it almost feels like a painting program of just like you're just going around and making these nice little swords. I think it's
a bit like I don't know if you ever had a spirograph.
Yeah.
Did you ever have one of those?
Where you trace the thing.
You put the pen in and you go.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit like that.
But yeah, you can. It's hard to see on the dirt, but when you're here, on that little bit, you can sort of see like the trails that it's leaving behind, and like I think I was just surprised like how much that sort of made it feel like you sort of knew where you were going, and it just gave the sense that you were like leaving a mark on things.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
really nice.
It sort of integrates you with the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's like a really convoluted paint package, really.
Exactly.
You can draw whatever you like as long as it's circles made out of mud.
Yeah, and I actually remember once we were testing like the co-op bike riding thing, and then I was making like this inward spiral thing, and you're just like, how did you do that? And I was just like, the one time I can make something that looks better than Rex's. So let me go back to the beginning of this. Crab man. Giant crabs.
Yeah, massive damage. So I mean, this is clearly not in-game, this section, although it's using a lot of in-game assets.
Yeah, I thought that was like, it was just like a really nice sequence to sort of show like, a big conflict and sort of an escalation and sort of how it might resolve.
By shoving a giant lance through it. Yeah.
Flying past the moon with a giant lance.
Yeah, when me and Moo disagree on things, we attack each other with giant lances.
Yeah.
And there's obviously like a tiny little nod to E.T. in there as well, where they go in front of the moon. Is there anything else? Oh, and seeing here as well, this is something which, this is a concept for, we haven't actually, we've done some...
I've dragged barrels around.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So we're into this idea of having like a little wagon, like a little rescue wagon.
Yeah.
It's represented in the trailer here with, it's actually a little skateboard with a box on top of it. And this was a way that you could, when you find members of the community who have become sort of possessed by all the spirits and what have you, and have wandered off into the darker corners of the island, this is a way that you can drag them home. And they might be delighted by that, or they might be not delighted by that. And there's lots of, lots of like comedy potential as well, of like, just with testing what it was like to drag a barrel around.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun because you get, obviously a bike's got kind of quite a large turning circle when you're going at speed, but if you've got a rope attached to the back of the bike, and then you've got a skateboard, and then you've got a box, and then you've got an old lady in it, that's a pretty big turning circle, and there's a lot of opportunity for terrible things to happen. So
you like to build up momentum on the back, and you make a sharp turn, and they sort of go flying out.
So I mean that's one of the areas that we'll be moving on to next, I think, once we're done with our water balloons.
Yep. Cool. Arrow to the knee.
Don't know what you're talking about. And there we are.
Yeah, and there we are.
Yeah.
And it's just, I guess it's sort of that slight reminder that it's just like, I guess everything you've seen, we'd obviously love to keep making it, but there's the reality of the situation. And I mean, so far it seems like everyone's going to help us continue this adventure, but it's.
I should check the number.
See if it's gone up.
This has probably gone down since we started this stream.
Don't talk about anything. Victor asked us what it's made in, and it is actually made in Unity. So
it hasn't gone down,
which is a good sign. It's made in Unity, and we've got some questions from the backers. I was trying to read. Were there any questions here that we should catch up on, or?
Whoa, there's loads.
Yeah, there's loads of chat.
I suppose we have been talking for quite nearly an hour.
Almost an hour.
Sorry. Love the skewed angles in the art. I like skewed angles. I like to try and have a consistently inconsistent perspective in everything. which makes making video games quite hard sometimes. Oh, so nice things.
I guess one question that we got from the community that was about like, I think it was specifically about your art, is that the art style is really stylized. It looks awesome, by the way. This is from Stuart Doggett. How did you decide on the art style?
I bought it from the Unity Asset Store. No, I didn't. I don't know, I think probably any art style is a combination of like your own personal goals for yourself, along with what will represent the game that you're working on at the time. And I had a real desire to get back to drawing again. I haven't been drawing quite so much recently, working on like other different 3D engines, and I kind of miss just putting pen to paper or Wacom, I guess. And really getting busy with just drawing all of the elements, and not just drawing that static version, but then drawing the additional frames, and filling up all of our texture memory with hundreds of versions of the same thing, and
just slightly different.
Like, why are you using this? But,
I know. I mean, I definitely appreciate it. It's one of these things of, I don't know if this is accurate enough, but it's just like, I always felt when you were doing it, like, we live, or this game takes place in a world that like the lines between reality and fantasy are a little bit blurred, and you want to get that across, but you don't want to literally blur your art style, because then it just looks muddy and horrible in screenshots. And I think we sort of blur in motion, just like at all times, it's just like the world seems a little bit shaky, like it's almost about to burst at the seams, which I think is a sort of really nice way to convey that idea.
I mean, it's been a little bit sort of tricky to just get the right balance between the way the characters look, the way that the natural environment looks, and then the way that the kind of man-made objects. But I kind of feel happy with how things are all working at the moment. Originally I was trying to do sort of like the architecture in a much more loose way, like you'd see some of the trees and the more natural elements, and everything was just looking a bit too blurry. That it really needed those sharp edges to come in. It's going in the right direction. I think. Hopefully, people seem to like it.
I guess
that's nice.
Another question we had from Gwenael. I don't think they can join us today, but they left it on the comments on the Kickstarter, was how was the project born? Was it clear from your head for a long time? How did you come up with two girls having to save an island on bikes? And why all the gooses? You can start with any of those questions.
I don't know about geese. I mean, well, I think geese are kind of interesting in that they're kind of quite a good early warning system to have on a farm, where, as well as like having a guard dog, if you have geese around, they'll all start honking and freaking out. If whether it's a real wolf or a metaphorical wolf has turned up, they will make a big fuss about it. So I don't know, maybe there's a movie or something I've seen at some point where just hearing like the geese just like honking and freaking out just felt like there's a potential for making something of them. And then also it's kind of out of that came the character that you travel around with, Captain Honkers, who do you want to talk about him?
Well, I mean, I guess he's Demelza's pet goose, but I think we sort of we were trying to prototype ways to sort of guide you around the island, and we did a lot of like UI based stuff, and it just didn't seem right. And then I came up with the idea of like, what if you had a character that was leading you through, and what if Captain Honkers would sort of sniff something and get a good scent of it, and then just sort of like run off in the approximate direction and honk, and you sort of had to track the sound to like navigate your way through the island. And I just thought sort of like a ridiculous comical way to have to find things is to follow the goose honks. But yeah, I guess the other part of that question is just like, was the idea clear from the beginning? I think I think, the thing that was probably clear is that we wanted something that was like about a gang of kids. I think
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
from the beginning, and I think we wanted sort of this idea that it's a gang of kids and they have to save the adults. I think
Yeah.
that's sort of,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
Goonies was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
big reference for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
But I think, what we've sort of presented at this point is pretty far. I mean, it still has that element, but it's pretty far from, where we started. We went through a lot of different ideas and like
Yeah.
what we thought worked best. We had more or less characters at different points. And I think just over time, you sort of just, expand ideas and then you cut them down and you expand them. And I think we finally got it cut down to like this set of characters and this sort of set of themes. And it was one of the few times that everything fit together really nicely. And I think that's when we sort of thought, okay, here's what it is. But like from like, I think, it was asked sort of from the perspective of like, where does inspiration come from? And it's like, I think it generally comes from just a lot of hard work and going through tons and tons and tons of ideas and just trying to find the things that really emphasize each other really well.
Yeah.
Cool. Another question is, so there's a few questions about being indie, and like one of them is, how's it to go from AAA to indie? Do you someday are you just struck by a freedom of lightning that strikes you and you want to make your own project? And how difficult is it going from Media Molecule to your own indie startup? I mean, so it's a bit easier in that you haven't really completely left Molecule, right?
No,
I mean, it's like
no. I still, I can't leave those guys. They're my oldest and best friends in the industry, and I really enjoy hanging out with them and getting inspired by being part of the team.
Yeah.
So I'm still there a couple of days a week, sort of making the tea and doing whatever I can to help out.
Yeah.
But I don't think of it being AAA to indie because Molecule's games are so indie.
Yeah.
Anyway, all the games like, it was a very indie vibe when you were at Molecule as well.
Definitely.
I mean, probably at its most indie. We were sort of in an office over a toilet shop, and the roof was leaking and stuff. And it's a little bit more. There's a little more comfort these days, but even so, it's still I think it's way. There's some indies that would be like more AAA than the
exactly.
Molecule are,
Yeah.
in what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I don't really see any big differences.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it sort of comes down to when you know what you're making, trying to find the people you need to make it. And I think that's sort of what it comes down to, one way or the other. It's not about, I don't think we usually put on our business hats and think, this is what we're going to do for this reason or that. It's just sort of, you sort of develop an idea, and sometimes ideas just fade away and sometimes they stick. And when they stick, you just, you're just always thinking about how do we bring this to reality? How do we make this thing that we're really getting attached to inside our own heads, and how do we bring it out into the real world? And it's just finding the right people for that. And I think,
exactly.
It's just sort of in that approach for us. Should we see if there's any new questions at the bottom of chat? I guess if we've missed your question, does it go up or down? This is how little
Goes
we
in
know.
all directions.
You might have to retype your questions because
Are we on target to meet your Kickstarter goal? Well, I kind of hope so.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we seem to be doing well. I mean, it's, you don't know whether it's just going to suddenly stop on any given day, but it seems to have good momentum. I mean, we're up to
68.5.
68.5.
Yep.
And 2 pennies. No, £2
£2, yeah.
Over. Yeah. I have to be careful I don't put the decimal point in the wrong place.
Let's see.
So, but I mean, it's all down to everyone's everyone's faith in us, and also shouting about it all over the internet does us a huge amount of help.
Cool. I'm going to take one more question from the Kickstarter backers, and then can we get to the bottom of this? And then we'll just see if there's anything, or I guess just jump. But the question from Ghost is, are the characters going to have proper Cornish accents?
That's kind of tricky, because I don't think well, I mean, we haven't got the budget to have like a full talking cast of
Yeah.
hundreds of characters. So I think we could maybe sort of write in a phonetic style, but I think that would be quite hard to read.
Yeah.
You know, when you're trying to just find out what you're supposed to be doing on a certain quest.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, there will be definitely phrases and ways that sentences are constructed that will
Yeah.
be very authentic. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
probably a little bit early to think
Yeah.
about the finer details like that.
Cool. Was there anything sort of, what are people saying now?
More birds, please. Dead Toast says, important question, will there be a Crazy Golf mini golf?
I don't know. We've definitely always, I think you've always made or asked me to put in the idea that we put golf balls around that you can knock around,
Yeah.
which is something I think I did do a prototype of. So it's possible. I presume he meant mini game, but
About the music, beautiful music and sound effects. Music by Daniel, sound by Kenny. No Star Wars, removing my pledge.
why are we using Unity? I think I just started messing around with it, and I think it just was a really nice and easy thing to get into. I think it's just really fast to get stuff on screen, and so we haven't really tried many of the other engines, but I think I was playing around with Unity 2D stuff, and I was like, oh, how does this work? And then it just seemed like a good fit. And once you've done too much work, it's hard to move.
So somebody said, was that S Delinky? I can't say it.
Which one is it?
This one.
Stalink. Yes.
Yeah. They say, Rex, I remember you saying Tearaway had some distinct Wickerman vibes. Is Knights and Bytes continuing that idea of lots of things going on under the surface? So, you know, Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man, not the terrible abomination that Nicolas Cage starred in, but the original one from the 70s. It's one of my favourite films of all time. And it's incredibly evocative, both in the way it's shot, in the soundtrack as well. And it had a big influence on Tearaway, on both the way it sounded and something that me and Kenny and Brian, the other composer, talked about a lot. And I think it's the vibe is a little bit different in Knights and Bikes, not going quite so much for that kind of pagan folklore, but still taking influences from sort of ancient past and like old forgotten stories and things that are like, you know, washed up in caves and left to die in rock pools and, you know, all these kind of elements. So it is the sort of the kind of smashing together of an ancient world and a modern world, and the way that those two bleed into each other.
Cool. I'm gonna have to watch Wicker Man now.
You've not seen it?
No, never seen it.
Oh my god, it's the best. It's better than Star Wars.
Cool. Does that seem like we've reached the end of our questions?
Oh look, it's pasted it in again. I can answer it
I
again.
see.
Good work.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions, are we considering getting more people involved? I mean, I don't think we want a massive team, but there's definitely things that we can't do. So, you know, as we brought in Daniel and Kenny for even the trailer, and so, you know, I think we'll definitely bring in help on those fronts. But yeah, obviously the more money we have, the more the more like super talented people we can find in certain areas.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, something that's you know, an advantage of being in the industry for a while is that we've built up, you know, really good contacts with, you know, have friends that we can really trust, and you know that it gives stability to a project, you know, like a Kickstarter type project. If we were just like, I don't know, if we didn't have those connections, it would be a lot scarier, because we would suddenly need to find someone
Yeah,
to
exactly.
write the music, and maybe they, you know, we think we're going to have a great time, and actually it
Yeah.
goes pretty sour. So
Yeah, exactly.
you know, we feel confident about who we can, you know, call upon
Yep.
should the need come up.
Great. I think we've reached the end of the questions and the end of the stream.
Wow, have we?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I guess we'll figure out what we'll do the next time. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. I don't know if you guys did. Hopefully it was you. It seems like most of you stuck around, which is a good sign. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming to watch, and obviously, I don't know, just thanks for everything.
Yeah, keep telling everyone about Nights and Bikes, and yeah, it's been really fun to just have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the game, because I think, you know, there's more depth than maybe you know, you might notice on the surface. So it's been really cool to have a chat with you all about it.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Okay. See you soon. Bye.